Victoria Sterling stared at the red notice taped to her art studio door, her hands shaking as she read the words that would change everything. 30 days to pay $15,000 or lose the space where she had poured her heart into creating beautiful paintings for the past 4 years. The small Brooklyn studio had been her sanctuary, filled with canvases depicting dreams and hopes that now seemed as fragile as morning mist. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. Surrounded by her life's work, watercolor landscapes covered the walls, each one telling a story of places she longed to visit but could never afford. Oil portraits of strangers gazed down at her with painted eyes that seemed to understand her pain. The easel in the corner held her latest piece, half-finished, waiting for inspiration that felt impossible to find under such crushing pressure. Victoria's phone buzzed with another message from her landlord. The tone was cold and businesslike, reminding her that art did not pay bills and dreams could not cover rent. She sank into the worn wooden chair where she spent countless hours bringing her visions to life. Now, wondering if this would be the last month she could call this place home, her best friend Emma had been trying to help, suggesting she'd take a job at a corporate office or give up on art entirely. But Victoria could not imagine a world where she did not create beauty from blank canvases. Her paintings were extensions of her soul, and losing this studio would be like losing a piece of herself. The Billionaire's problem across the city in Manhattan. Daniel Blackwood stood in his glass-walled office on the 50th floor, looking down at the busy streets below. At 31 years old, he had built Blackwood Technologies into one of the most successful companies in America. But his personal life was about to become his biggest business problem. His assistant knocked and entered with a worried expression. "Your parents are here, Mr. Blackwood. They seem quite determined to speak with you today." Daniel straightened his tie and prepared himself for another battle in the ongoing war over his future. His parents, Richard and Catherine Blackwood, entered with the confidence of people who had never been told no in their entire lives. His mother carried herself like royalty, while his father moved with the precision of a military general. "Daniel, we need to discuss your upcoming birthday," Richard began, without wasting time on pleasantries. "You turn 32 in 6 months, which means you have exactly 1 year left to fulfill your grandfather's requirements." Catherine placed a thick folder on Daniel's desk filled with photographs and detailed profiles. "We have selected several suitable young women from appropriate families. Each one would make an excellent wife and business partner." Daniel did not open the folder. His grandfather had included a clause in his will stating that control of the company would pass to the board of directors if Daniel was not married by his 33rd birthday. The old man believed that only married men had the stability needed to run a family empire. "I will find someone on my own terms," Daniel said, quietly, but his parents were not interested in his preferences. "You have had 31 years to find someone suitable," Catherine replied sharply. "The Henderson girl would be perfect. She graduated from Harvard, speaks 5 languages, and her father owns a chain of luxury hotels." Daniel felt trapped between his family's expectations and his desire to find genuine love. He needed a wife within 12 months, but refused to marry someone he did not care about. The pressure was suffocating. Now he needed to escape the glass towers of Manhattan to think clearly. The accidental meeting downtown Brooklyn felt like a different world from the corporate environment Daniel usually inhabited. He had driven there, without any real destination, just needing to be somewhere his family could not find him. The small coffee shop he entered was warm and inviting, filled with students, artists, and people who seemed genuinely happy, despite not wearing expensive suits. Daniel ordered coffee and sat in a corner booth, trying to process his impossible situation. His phone rang with urgent business calls, and as he gestured while speaking about stock prices and international contracts, his coffee cup flew off the table, creating a mess that drew everyone's attention. Embarrassment flooded through him as he looked around for napkins that were not there. Coffee dripped from the table onto the floor, and he felt completely helpless in this simple situation that had nothing to do with boardrooms or business negotiations. "Here, let me help you with that," a gentle voice said. Daniel looked up too. "See a young woman with kind brown eyes and graceful movements?" She appeared with paper towels and began cleaning his mess without making him feel foolish. Her hands moved with an artist's precision, and something about her calm presence made his stress begin to fade away. "Thank you so much," Daniel said, genuinely grateful for her kindness. "I am not usually this clumsy with simple things." Victoria smiled as she finished wiping the table clean. "Everyone has days like this. Would you like me to get you another coffee?" "Please, and let me pay for your trouble," Daniel offered, but she shook her head. No payment needed. Small acts of kindness make the world better. Daniel watched her move with natural grace as she ordered his replacement coffee. When she returned, he gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Would you like to sit for a moment? I feel like I owe you at least a conversation after you saved me from complete embarrassment." Victoria glanced at her watch. She had nowhere. Urgent to be, and something about this well-dressed stranger seemed different from the usual coffee shop crowd. Just for a few minutes. "The unexpected connection. I am Daniel," he said, extending his hand across the small table. "Victoria," she replied, her handshake firm and warm. They talked for over an hour without either of them noticing time pass. Found himself sharing things. He had never told anyone about the pressure of running a company and feeling trapped by other people's expectations. Victoria spoke about her love of painting, her struggles with the studio, and her dreams of creating art that would touch people's hearts. "You own an art studio?" Daniel asked, with genuine interest. "For now," Victoria replied with a sad smile. "I might lose it soon." Turns out passion does not always cover the bills, noting the determination mixed with worry. In her expression, an idea began forming in his mind. It was completely crazy and definitely risky. But looking at this woman who radiated authenticity and kindness, he wondered if they might be able to help each other solve their very different problems. "What if I told you I might have a way to help?" Daniel said slowly. "I know this will sound absolutely insane, but what if I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend for the next year?" Victoria nearly choked on her coffee, staring at him. In complete disbelief, "Excuse me." Daniel took a deep breath and explained his situation. The inheritance clause, his parents' matchmaking attempts, his need for a wife within 12 months to keep control of his company. As he spoke, Victoria's eyes grew wider with amazement. "So you want me to lie to your family?" she asked. "I want you to help me buy time to find real love," Daniel clarified. "In exchange, I would pay off your studio debt and give you enough money to expand your art programs. We spend time together, learn about each other, and present a convincing relationship to my family. When the year is over, we have a friendly breakup. Keep your studio, I have more time to find someone real, and everyone benefits." Victoria stared at him in silence. The offer was tempting beyond words, but felt wrong on so many levels. She did not even know this person, yet he was offering to change her entire life. "I need time to think about this," she said finally. Daniel pulled out a business card with gold lettering. "Take all the time you need, Victoria. But remember, you would not just be helping me. You would be saving something you love." As Victoria walked home that evening, Daniel's business card felt heavy in her pocket. By morning, her decision would set both of their lives on a completely unexpected path towards something neither of them saw coming. Victoria stood outside Daniel's Manhattan office building, feeling like she was about to enter a different universe. The glass tower stretched toward the sky, and everyone who walked past wore expensive suits and carried themselves with the confidence that came from serious money. She had spent the entire night thinking about Daniel's crazy proposal, and by morning, her decision was clear. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like traveling to another planet. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world of marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and furniture that probably cost more than her annual rent. Daniel's assistant led her through hallways lined with expensive artwork toward his corner office. "Victoria, you came," Daniel said, standing to greet her. Looked different in his business environment, more powerful and intimidating than the man who had spilled coffee in Brooklyn. "Have conditions," Victoria said, trying to project confidence she did not really feel. "Name them," Daniel replied, gesturing for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his massive desk. "First, no physical contact beyond what is absolutely necessary for appearances. Second, I want the money for my studio paid immediately, not when this arrangement ends. Third, we need clear boundaries about how much time this will require. Nodded thoughtfully. All reasonable requests. I have some conditions, too. They spent the next 2 hours working out the details of their unusual agreement. Daniel would pay Victoria's studio debts that very day and provide a monthly allowance for her participation. In return, she would attend family dinners, social events, and any occasions where a girlfriend's presence was expected. "When do we start?" Victoria asked as they signed the papers that would change both their lives. "Tonight, parents are expecting me to bring someone special to dinner." Victoria felt her stomach flip with nervous energy. Tonight. "I do not have anything appropriate to wear to meet your family." Daniel smiled reassuringly. "Leave that to me. Just be yourself, Victoria." That authenticity is exactly why this arrangement might actually work. She left his office with a check that would save her studio and allow her to expand her art programs. As the elevator descended toward street level, Victoria wondered what she had gotten herself into. In just a few hours, she would be sitting at dinner with some of New York's most powerful people, pretending to love a man she barely knew, meeting the family of the Blackwood mansion in Manhattan's Upper East Side looked like something from a movie about old American wealth. The limestone building rose 3 stories above the street, the windows that gleamed like jewels and a front garden that probably required a team of gardeners to maintain. Daniel had sent her a beautiful navy dress that fit perfectly, along with elegant jewelry that caught the light when she moved. Professional stylists had come to her small apartment to do her hair and makeup, transforming her from a struggling artist into someone who looked like she belonged in high society. "You look absolutely stunning," Daniel said as he met her on the front steps. He wore a charcoal suit that emphasized his tall frame and confident bearing. For a moment, Victoria forgot this was all pretend. "I feel like I am wearing a costume," she admitted. Smoothing the expensive fabric nervously, Daniel took her hand gently, and the warmth of his touch sent unexpected tingles up her arm. "Remember, we are just 2 people who met and are getting to know each other. Do not overthink the performance." The front door opened before they could knock, revealing a distinguished woman in her 50s, with perfectly styled hair and a smile that seemed polite but calculating. Catherine Blackwood studied Victoria with the intensity of someone examining a valuable painting for authenticity. "Daniel, darling," Catherine said, kissing her son's cheek before turning expectant eyes toward Victoria. "He must be the young woman we have heard absolutely nothing about." "Mother, this is Victoria Sterling," Daniel said, his arm sliding around Victoria's waist in a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. "Victoria, my mother Catherine." Victoria extended her hand with what she hoped was the right amount of confidence. "Mrs. Blackwood, it is such a pleasure to meet you. Daniel has told me wonderful things about his family." Catherine's handshake was firm and assessing. "Please call me Catherine. I imagine we will be seeing quite a lot of each other." The dining room was elegant and intimidating, with a crystal chandelier that cast rainbow patterns. Across the mahogany table set for 4 people, Richard Blackwood rose from his seat at the head of the table, and Victoria immediately understood where Daniel had inherited his commanding presence. "Father, this is Victoria," Daniel said as they took their assigned seats. Richard nodded politely but remained silent, his piercing blue eyes studying Victoria with the same intensity his wife had shown. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Catherine began serving wine and making small talk about the unusually warm weather for the season. "So Victoria," Catherine began, once the first course appeared, "tell us about yourself. What do you do for work?" Victoria had practiced this answer, but her mouth still felt dry. "I own an art studio in Brooklyn. I teach painting to children and adults, and I also create commissioned pieces for clients."
"How interesting,"
Richard said, though his tone suggested otherwise.
"Awake."
"And how exactly did you and Daniel meet?" Victoria glanced at Daniel, who gave her an encouraging nod. "We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Daniel was having trouble with his phone, and I helped him clean up the mess he made when he spilled his drink." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly. "Daniel made a mess?" That does not sound like our usually composed son. Everyone has clumsy moments, Victoria replied with a smile. I found it charming that someone so successful could be flustered by something as simple as spilled coffee. Daniel reached over and took her hand, the gesture sending warmth up her arm. Victoria has a way of making everything seem less serious. She reminds me that life is about more than business deals and board meetings. The touch felt genuine. His smile seemed real. And the way he looked at her made Victoria's heart flutter in ways that had nothing to do with their contract. Daniel was proving to be an excellent actor, but something about his expressions seemed authentic rather than performed. Growing attraction, how long have you two been seeing each other? Catherine asked, leaning forward with obvious interest. About 6 weeks, Daniel replied smoothly. We have been taking things slowly, getting to know each other without any pressure. Richard cut his steak with precise movements. 6 weeks is not very long to determine real compatibility. Sometimes you just know, Victoria said quietly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. Daniel is unlike anyone I have ever met. The truth of that statement hit her as she spoke. Even in their brief interactions, Daniel had shown her kindness, intelligence, and a vulnerability that contrasted sharply with his public image as a ruthless businessman. There was something genuine about him that made her forget they were performing for his parents. After dinner, Catherine insisted on showing Victoria the family photo albums while the men discussed business matters in the study. The living room was filled with evidence of Daniel's privileged upbringing, vacation photos from exotic locations, images of him at private schools and exclusive events, pictures that documented a life of wealth and opportunity she had never experienced. Daniel was such a serious child, Catherine said, pointing to a photo of a young boy in a school uniform. Always reading, always asking questions about how everything worked. Victoria studied the images, trying to understand the man she was pretending to date. In every photo, even as a child, Daniel looked slightly apart from the people around him. There was intelligence in his eyes, but also a loneliness that made her heart ache unexpectedly. He looks like he was always thinking about something important, Victoria observed. Catherine's expression softened noticeably. He was Daniel has always felt the weight of expectations. Even as a little boy, he carried responsibility on his shoulders. Sometimes I worry that he has forgotten how to simply enjoy life. When Daniel returned from his conversation with his father, he found Victoria and his mother laughing over a particularly embarrassing photo from his teenage years. I see you have discovered my awkward phase, Daniel said, settling beside Victoria on the sofa. Everyone has an awkward phase, Victoria replied. Mine involved a brief obsession with neon colors and way too much glitter on everything. I would have liked to see that, Daniel said, and something in his tone made Victoria look at him more closely. For a moment she thought she saw genuine interest in his eyes, not just the polite attention of someone playing a role. Public appearances 2 weeks later. Victoria found herself preparing for her first major public appearance as Daniel's girlfriend. The annual Blackwood Foundation charity gala would be attended by hundreds of New York's elite, and their relationship would be on display for everyone to see and judge. Daniel had sent her a gown that took her breath away, a deep emerald dress that hugged her, curves and flowed like water when she moved. The accompanying jewelry was understated but clearly expensive. Professional stylists had transformed her into someone who looked like she belonged in high society. You look like a princess, Emma said as Victoria prepared to leave her apartment. I still cannot believe this is your real life now. Victoria stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back seemed sophisticated and confident. Nothing like the struggling artist who had been served an eviction notice just 2 months ago. Sometimes I cannot believe it either, Victoria admitted. What if I say something wrong? What if people can tell I do not belong in this world? Emma squeezed her friend's shoulders supportively. You belong anywhere you choose to be. Just remember that underneath all the designer clothes and fancy jewelry, you are still the same person who cares about her students and works hard for her dreams. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and Victoria felt overwhelmed by the grandeur. From the moment she stepped out of the limousine, photographers captured every arrival. She heard whispers as people recognized Daniel and speculated about his mysterious new companion. Daniel appeared at her side. devastatingly handsome, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. "You look incredible," he said, offering his arm. "I feel like everyone is staring at us," Victoria whispered as they walked up the red carpet. "They are," Daniel replied with a confident smile. "But not because you do not belong here. They are staring because you are the most beautiful woman at this entire event." The compliment sent heat through Victoria's cheeks, and she reminded herself that Daniel was simply playing his part convincingly. But when photographers called for them to pose together, when Daniel's hands settled naturally on her lower back, when he looked down at her with an expression of complete adoration, it became harder to remember that none of it was supposed to be real. Unexpected intimacy inside the museum, the gala was in full swing. Crystal glasses clinked, designer gowns swirled across the dance floor, and conversations flowed around topics that Victoria had only read about in newspapers. Daniel guided her through the crowd, introducing her to business associates, family friends, and social acquaintances with easy confidence. Gabriel Thornfield. A smooth voice called from behind them. They turned to see a stunning blonde woman, approaching in a red dress designed to command attention and turn heads. "Charlotte, I did not know you were back in New York," Daniel said, his expression tightening almost imperceptibly. Charlotte Maxwell had been Daniel's girlfriend 2 years earlier, a relationship that had ended badly when she tried to leverage their connection into business advantages for her father's company. She studied Victoria with the calculating gaze of someone assessing potential competition. "And who is this lovely creature?" Charlotte asked, though her smile carried no real warmth. "Charlotte, this is Victoria Sterling, my girlfriend Daniel," said, his arm tightening protectively around Victoria's waist. "Victoria, Charlotte Maxwell." "How interesting," Charlotte said, her eyes never leaving Victoria's face. "I do not recognize you from our usual social circles." Victoria felt the subtle insult, but kept her expression pleasant. "I suppose we move in different circles. I own an art studio in Brooklyn." "How creative," Charlotte replied, with a tone one might use to describe finger painting. Daniel always did have a weakness for charity cases. The comment hit its target, and Victoria felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. Before she could respond, Daniel stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "I think you should find another conversation, Charlotte." Charlotte's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Of course. Enjoy your evening together." After she walked away, Daniel turned to Victoria with genuine concern. "I am sorry about that. Charlotte has always been bitter about our breakup." "Is that what I am to you?" Victoria asked quietly. "A charity case?" Daniel's hands cupped her face gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are the most genuine, talented, beautiful woman in this room. Charlotte is jealous because she knows she could never compete with someone like you." The sincerity in his voice made Victoria's heart race dangerously. For a moment, surrounded by hundreds of people but feeling completely alone together, she forgot about contracts and pretense. She forgot that Daniel was paying her to be there. All she could focus on was the way he was looking at her, like she was something precious he was afraid of losing. "Dance with me," Daniel said softly. The orchestra was playing a slow waltz, and couples swayed together on the polished marble floor. Daniel led Victoria into the dance with expert grace, one hand at her waist, the other holding her fingers gently. She followed his lead effortlessly, their bodies moving together in perfect harmony that felt completely natural. As they moved together, Victoria became acutely aware of everything about Daniel, the warmth of his hand through the fabric of her dress, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his eyes never left her face. Other couples danced around them, but she felt like they existed in their own private world, where nothing else mattered. "Victoria," Daniel said quietly as the music continued, "there is something I need to tell you." Before he could continue, the music ended and applause filled the room. The moment was broken, and they were once again surrounded by the noise and chaos of the gala. But something had shifted between them, something that had absolutely nothing to do with their business arrangement, and everything to do with two hearts beginning to recognize each other across the artificial distance they had created. Later that evening, Daniel drove Victoria back to Brooklyn in his personal car rather than sending her home in a hired vehicle. The luxury sedan felt intimate in the darkness, and they rode in comfortable silence for most of the journey, both lost in thoughts about what had happened during their dance. "What were you going to tell me when we were dancing?" Victoria asked as they neared her neighborhood. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. "That this is becoming more complicated than I expected." "Do you mean?" He pulled over near her apartment building and turned to face her completely. "I mean that somewhere between family dinners and charity galas, I have started to forget that this is supposed to be pretend." Victoria's heart stopped beating for a moment. "Daniel, ... I know this was not part of our agreement," he continued, his voice filled with vulnerability she had never heard before. "I know you are being paid to spend time with me, and I know that makes this situation ethically questionable at best. But I cannot deny what I am feeling anymore." The air in the car felt charged with electricity. Victoria stared at Daniel, seeing honesty in his expression that made her chest tight with unexpected emotion. "What are you feeling?" she whispered. "Am falling in love with you," Daniel said simply. "The way you laugh at my terrible jokes, the way you care about your students, the way you challenge me to be better than I thought I could be. This stopped being about fooling my parents weeks ago." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "This is crazy. We barely know each other." "I know that you put extra money in the tip jar when you think no one is looking," Daniel replied. "I know that you call your mother every Sunday, even though the time difference means you have to wake up early. I know that you cry during sad movies but pretend it is just allergies. I know that you are the kindest, most genuine person I have ever met." The confession hung between them, honest and terrifying. Victoria realized that her own feelings had been growing too, despite her attempts to maintain professional distance. Daniel was not the cold businessman she had expected. He was thoughtful, funny, surprisingly vulnerable, and completely different from anyone she had ever known. "Daniel, I... She began, but he held up a hand. "You do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know that for me, this has become real. You want to continue with our original arrangement, I will respect that. But I could not keep pretending that my feelings are fake when they are the most real thing in my life right now." Victoria looked at this man who had changed her world in just a few weeks. The sensible part of her brain urged caution. Their relationship had started as a business transaction, and mixing real emotions with financial arrangements was dangerous territory. But her heart was louder than her logic. "It has become real for me too," she admitted quietly. Daniel's eyes widened with surprise and hope. "Really?" "I tried to keep my distance, tried to remember that this was just a job. But somewhere along the way, I started falling for you too." Without thinking, Daniel reached for her hand. "What do we do now?" "I do not know," Victoria replied. "Honestly, this is not exactly a situation they cover in relationship advice books." Daniel laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. "We figure it out as we go. Together." The truth revealed 3 months into their arrangement. Victoria found herself sitting in Catherine Blackwood's elegant living room, surrounded by wedding magazines, fabric samples, and seating charts. The pressure to formalize their relationship had intensified dramatically since Daniel's 32nd birthday was approaching in just 2 months. "I think a spring wedding would be perfect," Catherine said, spreading photos of flower arrangements across the coffee table. "The gardens will be in full bloom, and we can hold the ceremony at the family estate." Victoria nodded politely while her stomach churned with anxiety. What had started as simple pretense had evolved into something far more complex. Her feelings for Daniel were genuine and growing stronger every day, but the foundation of their relationship remained built on deception. "Victoria, darling, you seem distracted," Catherine observed with maternal concern. "Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the planning?" little Victoria admitted. "Everything is happening so fast." Daniel entered the room carrying coffee for everyone, and Victoria felt the familiar flutter in her chest that occurred whenever he appeared. Over the past few months, they had spent countless hours together, and she had discovered layers too. His personality that made her fall deeper in love with each passing day. "Mother, perhaps we should slow down a bit," Daniel suggested, noticing Victoria's uncomfortable expression. "We have time to plan properly." Catherine's face brightened with determination. "Nonsense. Your birthday is in 8 weeks, and the inheritance. Clause requires you to be married by then. You cannot afford to waste a single day. The reminder of the business aspects of their relationship always made Victoria feel like she was walking on unstable ground. Daniel caught her eye and gave her a reassuring smile, but she could see the tension in his shoulders too. That evening, Victoria was helping Catherine address wedding invitations when Richard called Daniel into his study for an urgent conversation. Catherine continued chattering about flower arrangements while Victoria tried to focus on writing names in her best handwriting. "Victoria," Catherine said suddenly, her voice unusually serious. Victoria looked up from the invitation she was addressing, noting the change in Catherine's tone. "Of course. What is it?" Catherine hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. "I hired a private investigator to do a background check on you." Victoria's blood turned to ice. "You did what?" "Please do not be offended, dear. It is standard procedure for our family. We have to be careful about people who might try to take advantage of Daniel's wealth and position." Victoria set down her pen with trembling hands. "What did you find?"
Catherine
pulled out a manila folder from her purse. The investigator discovered some interesting information about your financial situation before you started dating Daniel. Specifically, that you were facing eviction from your art studio. Like it was spinning. Victoria knew that her secret was about to be exposed, and with it, everything she and Daniel had built together. "Catherine, I can explain, ... The report also shows a large deposit into your account the day after you supposedly met Daniel at that coffee shop," Catherine continued, her voice growing colder. "A deposit that coincidentally matched the exact amount needed to save your studio." Victoria felt like she was drowning. "Please, let me tell you what really happened." Catherine stood up abruptly, her elegant composure cracking for the first time since Victoria had known her. "You have been lying to us this entire time. Daniel paid you to pretend to be his girlfriend." "It started that way," Victoria said desperately, "but it became real. I love your son, Catherine. Everything I feel for him is genuine." Catherine's laugh was bitter and cold. "You are an actress playing a role for money. How can we trust anything you say now?" The family confrontation, the study door opened, and Daniel appeared with his father behind him. One look at the scene in the living room told Daniel that their secret had been discovered. "Mother, what is going on?" Daniel asked, though his pale complexion suggested he already knew. Richard stepped forward, his face hard with anger. "We know about your arrangement, son. We know that you hired this woman to deceive us." Daniel moved immediately to Victoria's side, his protective instincts overriding everything else. "This is not how we wanted you to find out." "So it is true," Catherine said, sinking back into her chair. "Our son's great love story is nothing but an elaborate lie." "The beginning was arranged," Daniel admitted. "But what Victoria and I have now is real. I love her and she loves me." Richard shook his head in disgust. "How can you be sure of anything she feels when she has been paid to perform those feelings?" The accusation hit Victoria like a physical blow. She had known this moment would come eventually, but she had not prepared for how much it would hurt to see the disappointment and betrayal in Catherine's eyes. "I need to speak with Victoria alone," Catherine said quietly, her voice deadly calm. Daniel started to protest, but Victoria touched his arm. "It is okay. I can handle this. Go." After the men left the room, Catherine studied Victoria with the piercing gaze that had intimidated business competitors for decades. "Tell me the truth, Catherine," said. "All of it." Victoria took a deep breath and told the complete story. The financial crisis with her studio, the accidental meeting with Daniel, the desperate proposal that had led to their arrangement. She spoke about the gradual development of real feelings, about falling in love despite the artificial circumstances, about the guilt that had been eating away at her for months. "I know how this looks," Victoria concluded. "I know you think I am a calculating opportunist who targeted your son for his money. But Catherine, I swear to you that my feelings are real. I would give up every penny Daniel ever gave me if it meant keeping his love." Catherine was silent for a long time, processing everything she had heard. "You understand that this changes everything?" "I know," Victoria whispered. "The board will never accept a daughter-in-law who was essentially hired to play the role. The scandal would destroy Daniel's chances of maintaining control of the company. Victoria felt her world crashing down around her. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you truly love my son, you will walk away from him before you destroy his future. The heartbreaking choice. Victoria returned to her apartment that night, feeling like her heart had been ripped from her chest. Catherine's words echoed in her mind. If she truly loved Daniel, she would sacrifice their relationship to protect his future. The woman was right, and Victoria knew it. Emma found her sitting on the floor of her studio, surrounded by paintings. That now felt meaningless. What happened? Emma asked. Sitting beside her friend, Victoria explained everything through tears that would not stop falling. Investigation, the confrontation, Catherine's ultimatum. Emma listened without interruption. Her own heart breaking for her best friend. So what are you going to do? Emma asked finally. I have to leave him, Victoria said quietly. If the board finds out about our arrangement, Daniel will lose everything he has worked for. I cannot be the reason his dreams are destroyed. You love each other. That has to count for something. Sometimes love means making sacrifices, Victoria replied, though the words felt like poison in her mouth. The next morning, Victoria sat down to write the most difficult letter of her life. She poured her heart onto paper, explaining her decision and her love for Daniel. She told him that walking away was the hardest thing she had ever done, but that his future was more important than her happiness. She left the letter on his desk at the office, along with a check returning every penny he had given her. Then she disappeared from his life as suddenly as she had entered it. The fight for love. Daniel Al found Victoria's letter and the returned money waiting for him on Monday morning. He read her words 3 times, each reading making him angrier and more determined. By the time he finished, he knew exactly what he had to do. He stormed into his parents' house without calling first, finding them in the breakfast room reading newspapers and discussing business matters as if they had not just destroyed the best thing in his life. How could you do this? Daniel demanded, throwing Victoria's letter on the table. Catherine looked up calmly. We saved you from making a terrible mistake. You drove away the woman I love, Daniel said, his voice shaking with emotion. Victoria is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and you destroyed our relationship with your investigation and ultimatums. Richard folded his newspaper precisely. Son, be realistic. The girl was paid to pretend to love you. How can you trust anything she said or did? Because I know her, Daniel replied fiercely. I know her heart, her character, her dreams. Victoria could have taken the money and disappeared months ago if this was just about financial gain. Instead, she fell in love with me despite our artificial beginning. The board will never accept her, Catherine said quietly. Daniel straightened to his full height, every inch the powerful businessman he had become. Then I will find a new board. Start a new company. I will not sacrifice the woman I love for a business that means nothing without her. His parents stared at him in shock, realizing for the first time that their son was willing to give up everything for Victoria. You would throw away your grandfather's legacy? Richard asked. I would throw away anything that requires me to live. Without the person who makes me complete, Daniel replied. Victoria taught me that success means nothing if you do not have someone to share it with. The grand gesture. Daniel spent the next week tracking Victoria down. She had moved out of her apartment and closed her studio, seemingly vanishing from New York entirely. Finally, Emma reluctantly told him that Victoria had gone home to her family in Oregon. Heartbroken and convinced that she had done the right thing, Daniel flew to Oregon without hesitation, renting a car and driving to the small town where Victoria had grown up. He found her in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by paintings and looking like a shadow of the vibrant woman he had fallen in love with. Daniel, Victoria said, shock written across her face. How did you find me? I will always find you, he replied simply. We need to talk. Victoria shook her head, tears already starting to fall. I cannot do this anymore. Your mother was right. I will only destroy your future. Daniel stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. My future is meaningless without you in it. The company, the inheritance, everything you worked for, ... can be rebuilt, Daniel interrupted. But I cannot rebuild my heart if I lose. You, Victoria, I am willing to give up everything to be with you. The company, the money, my family's approval. None of it matters if I do not have your love." Victoria stared at him through tears. "You cannot mean that." Daniel pulled out a small velvet box and dropped to one knee. "Victoria Sterling, you are the most genuine, beautiful, talented woman I have ever known. You taught me that real love is worth more than any business deal or family expectation. Will you marry me? Not because of any contract or inheritance clause, but because I cannot imagine spending my life with anyone else." Victoria gasped as he opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring that was nothing like the ostentatious jewelry his mother would have chosen. "Daniel, your family will never accept this, ... Then we will build our own family," Daniel replied. "You and me, and eventually children who will grow up knowing that love is the most important thing in the world." Victoria looked at this man who was willing to sacrifice everything for her and realized that true love sometimes required the courage to fight for what mattered most. "Yes," she whispered, falling to her knees and throwing her arms around him. "Yes, I will marry you." The new beginning, 6 months later, Daniel and Victoria stood in a small chapel in Oregon, surrounded by her family and the few friends who had supported their unconventional love story. Daniel had indeed given up control of his company, but had started a new technology firm with Victoria as his partner. Her artistic vision, combined with his business acumen, was creating something neither of them could have achieved alone. Catherine and Richard Blackwood were not in attendance, but Daniel had received a letter from his mother the week before. So no 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 and no 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 and no 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 Sessa may Sessa lo may Sessa la. I'll see it or I'll see Sessa may see Sessa may see Sessa may Sessa no 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 Sessa no may Sessa may Sessa may Sessa may Sessa may Sessa no 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 Sessa they send no I'll say way it. She admitted that she had never seen him as happy as he was with Victoria, and that perhaps she had been wrong about what constituted a suitable wife for her son. As Victoria walked down the aisle in a simple, white dress she had designed herself, Daniel knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. Their love story had begun with pretense and contracts, but it had evolved into something real and beautiful and lasting. "Do you take this woman to be your wife?" the minister asked. "I do," Daniel replied, looking into Victoria's eyes and seeing their entire future reflected there. "Do you take this man to be your husband?" "I do," Victoria said, her voice strong and certain, as they kissed to seal their union. Both of them knew that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most extraordinary love stories. Their fake engagement had become the most real thing in both their lives, proving that the heart wants what it wants, regardless of how that wanting begins. Years later, when people asked them how they met, Daniel and Victoria would smile at each other and say they met over spilled coffee and a mutual need for something they did not even know they were looking for. It was not the complete truth, but it was not a lie either. Love, they had learned, was complex and messy and beautiful, just like the life they had built together against all odds. Their story proved that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that real love can bloom anywhere, even in the soil of pretense and desperate circumstances. What mattered was not how their story began, but how they chose to write the ending together, the end.